as mayor.
Oh, not up there.
Every 2 months,
We're doing all
friend of
hunting.
CRM, but
So we'll-
the difficult ones.
I got this.
We were doing
It was a great tool.
I
I wish we could get back to that, but we're starting.
8 nights
I don't think
doing mine disposal.
how much easier.
And Jarvis Bay said, they radioed
Get how much
us and said, I'd just let you know that
How
Morning,
we've
doing what
councillors,
we're elected.
staff and those in the gallery. We might have to invest in some stadium seating the way we're going here. But good to see you here and look, we really appreciate the fact that there's people in our community that are genuinely interested in coming and not only seeing on live stream how things work, but coming here and you know, getting a chance at a cup of tea time to mingle with the councillors as well. So thanks for coming, thanks for making the effort. We will start, I'll hand over to Councillor Jensen for the acknowledgement of country.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land, Cubby Cubby, on which this event is taking place. We would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their ongoing connection to land, sea and community. We pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We also extend that respect to all other people present. And can I just add a footnote on the end of that, that NAIDOC Week celebrations are on Friday at Nelson Reserve from 10 o'clock. If anyone would like to come down.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen. We now have Oral,
Yes,
is that correct pronunciation?
absolutely.
From the Uniting Church,
Yes.
who will share a few words of wisdom and then lead us in a brief prayer.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. I am here representing not just our own church, but the network of churches here in Gympie. And also would like to pay respect to traditional custodians, leaders past, present and emerging, and also to past leaders of council, as I do want to acknowledge council this morning, and to past leaders on whose work we build, to the present, mayor, councillors, who are building for the future, and for those who will lead in the future as well, the emerging leaders. And can I acknowledge also members? I'm interested in what's on your agenda today. Last time I was here, I don't think anyone was sat there. So if I'd known it was going to be such a crowd, I'd have done more preparation. So welcome to you as well. Actually, something that does come to mind, when in terms of church, we've been accused, and we've earned this accusation, of only being interested in 3 things, A, B, C, which is attendance, buildings and cash, which we deserve some of that title, but it's no longer true, I'm pleased to announce. In fact, about 20 years ago, I was at a similar meeting, and it was under the Premier Peter Beattie back then, who was doing some asset mapping in the community. So everybody who was considered an asset was brought to that. Fireys, Ambos, obviously, housing, everybody was there. But I was a bit put out to notice the church hadn't been invited, any representatives, so we crashed the party as it was. And we found out that, you know, yeah, really we're part of that as well. Churches who've been here as long as there's been a community here, we're in with the first settlers, and we're usually the last, sometimes never leave, in all of that. But we too represent similar concerns. In fact, primary concern, which is to build community. We're not here to build a church. Jesus said he would do that. He does a much better job than we would do. But we are here to build community. And that asset mapping that Peter Beattie undertook, rather than being ABC, I always remind our people it was ABCD, which is asset-based community development, which is what we're all about. We're all about building community together. Everybody here is an asset to this community. So we do want to encourage mayor and councillors and all staff, because I'm sure you come under your more than fair share of criticism, as any leader does. Our name right now, Uniting Church, sounds a bit like yours, Gympie Regional Council. We are the Gympie Regional Uniting Church, which is a bit of a mouthful. we're going to change that to just uniting 457L because we feel that's more reflective of who we are. And that's everybody who's in the general area. 86 communities. Keep in mind of that. But not everybody feels directly involved with Gympie. But with that postal code, there's more of a connection we feel. And we always try, well, I try and remind our council, we have a council, it's not as big, our rooms are not as grand as this, but we have a church council, and we are accountable to our community. And I always try and remind them that we should operate like a regional council, a city council, that is, be planning for the future, and not so much like the Rural Fire Brigade, God bless them, which means we're usually running around trying to put out spot fires. Sure, that never happens in council, but it certainly happens in our council. One of the reasons that happens is because we've got unruly members in our council and in our church. In fact, we've got them in council as well. And they're everywhere. And when I say unruly members, I'm not referring to individuals, I'm referring to what James, the apostle, said in chapter 3 of his book. And that unruly member that we have is the tongue, according to him, which, although being small, is rather like a rudder of a ship and can really get it off course. Here's what he says, that a word out of our mouths may seem of no account, but they can accomplish nearly anything and destroy nearly anything. It only takes a spark, remember, to set off a forest fire. A careless or wrongly placed word out of your mouth can do that. By our speech, we can ruin the world, turn harmony into chaos, and throw mud on reputations and send the whole world up in smoke. Words are powerful things. I don't want to finish on that because that's a bit of a negative note. So, word of wisdom from a collection of books called Book of Wisdom, and from someone who was regarded and still is today as the wisest person ever, Solomon. You've heard of the expression, the wisdom of Solomon. And this is what he wrote in Proverbs chapter 25. Just a couple of verses that I hope will encourage you. Verse 11 says this: the right word at the right time is like a custom-made piece of jewellery. This is a beautiful way of putting it. And a wise friend's timely reprimand is like a golden ring slipped on your finger. We often think of it a bit like a slap in the face, but from a friend, wise words. And this verse 15, patient persistence pierces through indifference. Gentle speech breaks down rigid defences. Wise words. And on behalf of United Church and the network of churches, we do want to encourage you, and on their behalf, I want to pray for you this morning. As we pray, I pray what Solomon prayed, or what he asked for when it was offered by God, anything he could ever want, and he asked for wisdom. And so, Father, we do pray for wisdom for our mayor, for all council members, for all staff. We pray for wisdom. We pray for wisdom beyond their experience, and we pray for wisdom beyond their years as they seek to guide us. We pray for wisdom from this community, Father, as well. For all of us who call Gympie 457L home. Wisdom in the way that we speak. We pray that you would guide our speech, and that mostly it would be of encouragement and of building community rather than tearing it down. Father, we pray also that we would build up those who take on the awesome challenge of leading in all areas of our community. We pray for our community right now, particularly in light of recent events, tragic events that have cost lives and created fear in our community as well. Things that happen not far from this meeting place. We recognise that this is not unique to our area. It is in fact, and unfortunately, part of all communities right now. So we pray for those who've been affected, particularly the young woman with her family who was held up at knife point recently, for the families of those who tragically lost their lives as well. And we pray, Father, for all of our leaders and our police in particular, and support workers in the area of domestic violence. We pray, Father God, for a spirit of persistence and patience for our council that will help them break through indifference and sometimes resistance as well. So, Father, would you guide them in all their deliberations, particularly today, in the agenda as they move through that. We pray for good outcomes, and we do pray for DP 4570. We pray for everybody who's part of that. We pray that this place would be a place, a good place, a decent place, a safe place to live, a desirable place as we encourage other people also into the area. So bless us, we pray, Father, bless council, and may they prosper in all that they seek to do. For we ask this in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you. We'll like to rise. This week there's probably no better time to take a minute to contemplate those that have recently passed in our region. Thank you. We'll move on to section 1, disclosure of interests. Any, Councillor Milne?
Item 7.3, declarable.
Any other disclosures, Councillor? Move on. No apologies or leave of absence for today. Confirmation of minutes. We have 2 recommendations there in front of us in relation to 2 meetings, 1 ordinary meeting, 1 special meeting. Councillor Smoot to move, Councillor Devereux to second. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Before us, we move on to section 6, 6.1.
Did we have 2 recommendations for 2 meetings?
We did them both at once, didn't we?
You did.
Yeah.
I've listed them separately here, that's all, sorry.
So, item 6.1, Chief Executive Officer Annual Delegation Review, and I'll hand over to Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hatch.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. Item 6.1 is the Council to CEO Annual Delegation Review. Delegations under legislation, there are many powers and authorities to make decisions under the legislation, and every year there is an annual review of Council to CEO delegations. The review, we look at Local Government Australia Association of Queensland as the best source for developing the CEO delegations. The delegations also cover council local laws. The CEO can then sub-delegate any of the delegations unless
council restricts the sub-delegations. All the amendments to the delegation list that are in the attachment were presented to council on the 12th of July for review and comment, and the attached list now collates all the proposed delegations. In the delegations amendments, there are changes to, it says new pieces of legislation, but you will see that the legislation is, 1975 for the Building Act, Electricity Act, they're older. It just means that they are new pieces of legislation to the delegations list. I will take the report as being read. Are there any questions on the report?
Questions, councillors? Tentative there, councillor.
Yeah, should I? Through the chair, there's delegations here related to different races of human beings, like races of people, where there's a delegation for one type of people, for example, Torres Strait Islanders. It states here the power of, as a person, for example, power as a person who carries out an activity to take all reasonable and practical measures to ensure the activity does not harm Torres Strait Islander cultural heritage. What about everyone under the banner of Australia and include rather than segregate the races under the banner of Australia? I mean, like, we're a democracy.
Yep, so through you, Mr Mayor, the legislation is written on behalf of all of Australian residents or Queensland residents, and as part of the legislation for what we're required to do, we work under the legislation that's passed through Parliament. So I think the question you're asking might be directed at a different authority than council and administrative staff.
Yeah, I was just highlighting, is it a risk? But if it's gone through legals, if that's the direction that we're going, well, yeah.
It is a piece of legislation that is written for the public, and it's set by the public through a process. But just because council gives a delegation to the CEO doesn't mean you have to use that delegation. It can still come back to council. And if that's something that you're concerned about, well, then we could look at that further.
If it's useful to add to that, through the Mayor, I think I hear what you're saying. We're extracting pieces of legislation and putting them in here, and your, if your acceptance is moving for myself to do. But the intent here is that we treat everyone equally and respectfully across our community and across Australia.
Fantastic. That's what I like to hear.
Any other questions, Councillor Cameron?
I do have a general one through the chair. I don't understand why there's so many delegations coming through every year. I mean, what triggers more of those things? Why? My understanding is that you run the organisation. I don't understand why that has to be all these delegations and stuff as opposed to just the one overriding one. So could you just explain the theory behind that?
Yep, so through you, Mr Mayor, the delegations is all about efficiency of administration. And the way council has run over many years, there will be industry best practice, what can be delegated to the CEO to make decisions, because if everything came through council, it would just take too long. So what we've done now is also with our managers and coordinators in place, we will then go through and sub-delegate the delegations that the CEO receives. It's all about the efficiency of operations. Now, over time, we have independent reviews into all different things, and you'll see the Electricity Act is a new piece of legislation that's on the delegations. There might be things that come through for council to administer through reviews or different things in the Australian society that come through. That's why there's new legislation being put onto these registers. So we have to continually look at them and make sure that whatever council is responsible for, that we have the power and authority to do so. Because in a delegation, you also have to have the right skills and qualifications to be able to make a decision. And that's why new ones come up. We have to get trained. We have to continually be reviewing them.
Councillor, I might be able to assist there. You're right, it's the CEO's job to run the organisation. If we gave one delegation for that, it's rather broad, and you then could end up in the CEO could go and do something that council's not comfortable with, and he stands back and says, oh, well, I had a delegation to run the organisation, and that's what I did. Part of the delegations are to break that down and make sure that his responsibilities are clear, but also that they don't overstep the democratic elected representatives who are here to guide the organisation as well. So it's about meeting legislative requirements, but also not giving him this open slabber to go and do whatever they please, having some control from us over the CEO.
And I do understand what you're saying, and I get that it's legislation, so we don't have a choice, really. We've just got to go with it. But I do wonder, is it taking away, stripping councillors of responsibility and authority? That's my first thought. And the second one is, by getting too detailed and having so many, I mean, I don't know if you've tried to read them, but there's like a week's worth just in reading them, let alone understanding it and working out how it all works. So I don't know how you do it and understand, whereas very broad, slightly broader ones would mean that it's simpler to understand for everyone. So that's my thing. I understand it's legislative. I understand voting it through is not a difficult decision, but I do wonder at the amount of work that it makes for everyone.
The point you've raised is quite relevant in that, I have read them over a number of years, and it's a bloody long list.
Yeah.
And some of them you read and you go, how relevant is this? That's part of our responsibility as councillors to go through that and on the balance work out whether or not we feel like we're giving up too much responsibility or power or control. It's a tough one, and I think that's why we reconsider them annually. And you don't want to strip opportunity off the CEO to sort of keep the organisation moving, but at the same time you don't want to give them too much authority that they can do things that they're not supposed to. So it's a delicate balance, but I know it's bedtime reading that will put you to sleep. Just see ya.
Look, there's some general points to note. The document should be effective in the first instance so that there's not a need to come back to council all the time. Obviously, the key is to choose the right person. So that's obviously something you need to keep looking at. And this is a best practice by lawyers. They've seen that this is the best fit, so that's the first one. It provides protection, so that when we make decisions, or whether I make decisions outside, they're endorsed by you and we've done the right thing, so that we can backtrack and make sure that if there's no point when we need to go to court, we've done the right thing and we've protected people. There's a currency piece because legislation changes, and that was mentioned. There's certain things you can't delegate, so appointing a CEO is one of them, and all those sorts of things, those are all in place. But I guess the main thing is that when I started the role, I reviewed the delegations, I reviewed them for this meeting, I've printed out a copy, they sit on my desk so I can stay aligned to what you've given me. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I just want to say that our staff have gone through each one and read each one. As we've set up the governance framework, we will now look at the sub-delegations. So this is a prime piece of work to how the council will operate administratively in an effective manner.
Any other question? Councillor Warner?
Through the chair, easy question.
Yeah.
An even easier answer, and this is mainly for the record. How many CEO delegations are there?
It's in the report.
Yep.
3,716.
3,716. And I read every one of them, it's just that I wasn't counting at the same time.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Councillor Smerd to move, someone to second. Councillor Polly, Councillor Smerd to speak.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move. Without these delegated powers to the CEO, the council would grind to a halt rather quickly. It just helps in the general running of council from day to day, and it is a necessity that we have to have.
Councillor Polly.
Mr Mayor, I'm actually more pleased to see that Councillor Devereux has finally come to the same epiphany that Moses had 4,000 years ago. When he worked out you can just have 10 commandments, run the whole society. Anyhow, we're in 2023 and we have 3,700 just to do one town. But here we are, and I'm happy to move that.
We changed it back to
We're not going to go
Commandments,
back
not
to
delegations, commandments.
commandments. No, I'm not pushing that at the moment.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against, any other speakers for, Councillor Smeaton to close.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote, all those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Item 6.2, operational plan, quarter 4 update.
Yes, through Mr Mayor, before I hand over to Ms Hatch, I would just like to add that this is a statutory obligation of council to report on its quarterly, to report quarterly on the progress of the operational plan, and we will direct any relevant questions on specific outcomes to the Director as we progress through the report.
Mr Mayor, the briefing note provides an quarter 4 update. In the report, it outlines some of the more comprehensive items that are progressing into the next operational plan for the financial year. Remembering that the operational plan doesn't include all activities that council do, it includes activities that are to push the council in the direction to achieve the goals of the corporate plan. Some of the business as usual information is not included in the operational plan, but this is where we are from the end of last financial year and now progressing towards next financial year, its operational plan that was approved yesterday. Are there any? I'll take the report as being read. There's a fair few items there. There's also some of our achievements that have occurred and are reported. Are there any questions on the report?
Questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
I do admit I got a bit in the bit where it says all the items, section 2 report.
Yes.
I did get a little bit confused when it said, item 24 is now going to be item 28, but 28 is now become 23. Didn't quite get how this item is now being fulfilled under that item, but that item no longer exists because that item is now some other item. You're just moving.
Sorry, that's a typo.
Oh, there's
The project grid should be under item 23 of the new operational plan. So the work that's being left over from grid,
right,
that was under that item, is now progressing under item 3 of
the new one.
That's
Through.
right.
Okay, right. I got confused with it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go back and reread that one.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Mill. Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr Mayor, it's been good to see that over the last year that this operational plan was in effect, that things that don't quite meet deadlines, that's to be expected. There's also a number of achievements, such, I guess, just particularly say that the Eastern Sill construction tender's been awarded, so that's a big achievement, this operational plan. So very happy to move this report.
Councillor Mill.
The operational was the last, obviously, update for this operational plan from last year. We did our new one yesterday. You can see that there are a lot of items that are being carried on, but that's how planning is. It's not just 1 year. You have to do it over numerous time. When we didn't hit our targets in our operational plan, it doesn't mean we're failing. It's just there is explanations for absolutely everything in there. So I think it's a very good report. It does explain where we are and where we're going, and it looks like we are progressing our corporate plan. So I'm happy to have it seconded.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.3, amendment to schedule fees and charges. So Mr Lewis, Ms Hatherall.
Sorry.
All right. Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. The report before you is an amendment to our adopted fees and charges for 2023-24. At different times during the year, we may come to you to amend these fees and charges depending on circumstances around legislation, which is one of the changes in this document, and also some reviews of the existing services that we're providing to the community. There are fees and charges proposed to be changed for the stock route management fees, Kilkeevan Equestrian Centre and the waste management fees for your consideration.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Smith?
As I understand it, we had an agreement with council that there was only large increases in fees that they would be highlighted before they were adopted. I don't recall ever seeing the large increases we had in the equestrian centre charges brought to council before.
No, and through you, Mr Mayor, the changes that we usually calculate as part of the fees and charges document is reliant on the fact that the fee is a number. The fees and charges that changed significantly for the Kilkeevan Equestrian Centre actually had text in the column, and unfortunately it didn't come up as a significant change. So I think the fees wording was a minimum of $100 plus $10 for every horse over 10, up to a maximum of 300. That was the previous fee, and the new fee was similar wording, so it didn't actually come up when we did the formulas.
But the new wording was actually 300, minimum was 300 plus $10 for every horse. No horses, no limit on horses. That was
Yep.
Which added a great deal to the expense of anyone that wanted to hire it.
That's correct.
So through the chair, we'll make sure we use that system so that when we look for things, we don't just look for numeric data. We look for it in its complete form.
Councillor Devereux, then Councillor Pollock.
Just, thank you. Through the Mayor, just on the, through the Chair, $10 a horse isn't an awful lot though, is it? It might be more for the event, but as far as those participating in the event, if they're paying a fee.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can have some non-profit organisations that have got, if we go on the new fees that we did at $300 plus $10 a horse, if you've got 100 horses there, it soon adds up.
That's right, but it still comes back to the per participant. If they're paying for it, I mean, if they're paying for it, it's not that much per. It's about the same as playing a sport, like paying to play a game of netball or something like that. So there is that to consider as well.
Yeah, but I know that there was a lot of people that were using the centre that said under those new pricing schemes we won't go anywhere near it. So therefore we turned it into a ghost town.
Councillor Polly and Councillor Johnson.
My question, I actually read the report, went, oh, there's fees, that's what they are, but you almost highlighted on it. Is why are we changing it? Did we forget something, or is there legislations coming that makes us change it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it was basically administrative error on council's officer's behalf. We increased the fee above what we increased the fee, but we didn't report the increase to council because of an administrative issue we had,
right.
And we should have done that. And this issue shouldn't have come before council at this juncture. It should have been addressed
So
as
now,
part of our budget workshops.
Right.
But having said that, we've had, as Councillor Smurden has indicated, we've had a number of items of feedback about the new fee and about organisations wanting to move to alternative venues. So that's why we've brought the fee back to council for resolution, back to how the fee was structured with a 5% increase on the 2022-23 fee.
Okay, so we're here, we can accept this now or reject it or
Yes.
go away and do some more research. That's okay. That's where we're at.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I can also add, that's the Kilkeevan Equestrian Centre fee. There are legislative recommendations coming out of the state government for the stock route management.
Yep.
It's similar to that library transfer fee. So this is a mixture of both, where we've got advice from state government that they've set a particular fee, and we've also taken feedback from the community as well.
Okay. So for one final question, like, let's say we reject this recommendation, we're just reverting to the existing policy as it stands, or we have no...
So through instance, if council decides to resolve not to accept this resolution, then we would revert back to the fee and charge that was adopted as part of the fees and charges for the 23-24 financial year. And just adding to another juncture to what Ms Hatherall was saying, some of those fees and charges come before council because we are not notified of the new fees and charges by the state before we adopt our fees and charges. So that's why the legislation is It's written the way it is so that council can amend its fees and charges at any point in time throughout the year.
Councillor Jensen.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Would it be something that we could consider having like 2 columns and charging the not-for-profits the old fee that they're used to and not crucifying them, but those who make a business out of any horses too, they will put that cost onto their riders anyway. So is that something that we could consider? That way we're not attacking our not-for-profit groups. Does it sound all right, Hillary?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think the approach being proposed by officers in regard to the Kilkee Equestrian Centre event fees is that we undertake some really comprehensive benchmarking against other equestrian centres, and then we undertake some stakeholder engagement both with our not-for-profit users as well as our commercial users, and we do so for any changes being brought back to council for the 24-25 fees. That's a process that we undertook with the Gympie Aerodrome users, and we found that had great results both for the user groups and also for the ratepayers in council. That consultation wasn't undertaken this year, which is why we have seen some feedback coming back from our user groups, and that's why we're bringing it to council very early in the piece to actually rectify the situation so we don't lose any further bookings. And our suggestion is that we undertake that further consultation and come back next year. And to Councillor Jensen's question, we absolutely can make a distinction between not-for-profit and commercial. Do that consultation at the time.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. There's someone to move. Councillor Smerdon, someone to second. Councillor Warlock, Councillor Smerdon to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Build things like the equestrian centre for the community. It's for the community use, and I think that we've always got to try and make it user friendly as much as we can. So therefore, I'm in favour of setting these fees at what is recommended here. It just makes it more usable, more user friendly, and more affordable for the general public.
Councillor Warlock.
This is evidence of the council adapting to those who use the facility, and we're listening and changing for the good.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smerdon to close. With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.4, the June interim financials. Mr Lewis and Haverhill.
Mr Mayor and councillors, this report is our usual end of month report for our financials, with a little caveat in terms of the fact that this is the end of financial year. The end of financial year process takes us a little bit longer. We have a number of end of year journal adjustments we need to make for accruals and changes that the auditors may request or may endorse. So this is an interim set of accounts. It's based on the position of council a week after the end of June, which was to try and fit into the council meeting schedule. It gives you an indication of where we're tracking at this point in time, but this is subject to both end of financial year adjustments and audit confirmation. The final statements for the 22-23 year will be audited and presented to council prior to the end of October. That's the plan. So,
thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Through the chair, page 365, and it's work order 5430, art gallery air conditioner replacement. Does that include air conditioning in the workshop room?
I would have to defer to the Director of Infrastructure for that.
Thank you.
Might need to take that one on notice.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we may, I believe we'll have to take that on notice now that the Infrastructure Director and I are 100% clear on the specification.
We'll take that one on notice.
Okay, and well, added to that, if it doesn't, can we find out when it's going to be looked at, please? Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, yeah.
You got any other questions, Councillor?
I do, but
Keep rolling, like we normally do.
Thank you. Page 364, sporting fields, future sporting fields. The figure there is 125,000. So obviously we've either bought land or that money's been put somewhere else.
Through you, Mr Mayor, this is in terms of our financial maturity for planning for projects. There was an amount of $1 million originally mentioned for future sporting fields. There's investigations, reports, all of that sort of recommendation need to be packaged up, and that's what we decided to put in the current financial year. And the bulk of the financial implications for future sporting fields will be spread over 2023, 24, too many financial years, sorry, and potentially further. So there hasn't been a purchase. I'm not sure at what stage the report writing and the reviews are at, but that was specifically around that planning phase.
Or to that, it hasn't specifically been moved to something else, it's just gone back into general funds type thing?
And no, there should be in your budget pack from yesterday, there should be a project.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. Work order 4344, which is again on the same page, 365. Gympie Museum gantry removal. Is that the walkway that goes across? Is that what we're talking about there?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I believe so, but I'm not completely sure. We would have to check and take that on notice.
Oh, it's not there?
Yeah, he's...
Yeah, sorry, we'll take it on notice.
That's well, okay. Because there is, that gantry does have that tarp underneath it, which is not a great look for people when they first come into town. So I thought I saw it there the other day, so it did trigger my mind. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. We just have a response to your first question.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor. It doesn't include that workshop room, current air conditioning. It isn't currently budgeted for any variation to that project. We would have to rescope and bring a report back to council for variation to the budget unless we can accommodate it within the existing operational budget, dependent on the quotes. So we can extend the scope to do that and investigate the price of that and bring it back to council. So, but it's not currently included.
It doesn't even have air conditioning at the moment.
No, it doesn't. And it gets very hot and it gets very cold.
I would have thought it would have been the perfect opportunity, but okay, thank you. That'd be great if you could. Thank you.
Councillor Polly?
Yeah, sorry, page 21 of the report. Oh, it's 2021. It's my old thing. Just get confused again. The cash on hand, see it's going gangbusters, up to 88 million. And I know that that's money on hand. We've still got to, it'll get used up till rates time. But then I saw in the report yesterday, the one, and it says we need $30 million on hand to operate. No, so we've got some cash there. But we seem to be way above that 30 mil now. At what point does this stop? Or we know we've got enough in hand now?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the cash balance is very, very healthy at the moment. Council have been the fortunate recipient of a number of grant funding opportunities, including the QRA recovery works. The process that the QRA go through is when they approve a particular package of works, they actually pay us 30% up front. So I think, and I'm digging into the realms of memory at the moment, I think there's about $60 million at the moment is constrained, and that's for developer contributions, grant funding, prepaid, and some other bits and pieces, little operational grants. So that money, when we say it's constrained, it's actually set aside almost for specific purposes. The unconstrained cash is the amount that we say we need, about 30 million to operate.
Yep.
That's the best practice.
I think to answer your question, Councillor Polly, that the number that you see is constrained cash, that's set aside for other things, and our daily savings account, for want of better words.
So the free cash is around 20 million.
Thereabouts.
Right, so we're getting close to the 30 million.
Yep. Through you, Mr Mayor, and obviously, as you alluded to, 30th of June is one of those drops in cash before we reissue the rates notices.
Yep, brilliant. So just one final question. I know it's a question of statement. Once again, I noticed that the positive variance is 800,000 for planning building fees. So that's over and above the budget of what we thought we were going to get, which sort of keeps going back to my thing I was on about a few years ago, that the council was around a growth rate of 1%, 1.9%, and yet every quarter we're just way above that, because I thought we should be more like 5 or 6%. So I know I suppose it goes back to the CEO, because somewhere in all our reporting and future projections, are we allowing for a 5% plus growth? We're still working on 1.9%, because I think we're in danger. If we think we're only going to grow at 1.9%, our infrastructure is going to be way behind.
Well, I think the way we do it, in terms of our income, we take a conservative business model of under projecting our income, but in terms of our expenses to deal with that growth, we take a conservative model to overestimate that. So we're on the spectrum of not promising and under delivering in terms of revenue, but being aware of our growth and the expense around that, so we're not caught short. Because if we projected a 5 or a 10% increase in revenue and you only get a 3, you end up looking pretty ordinary, and you probably spend money you don't have. And if you underestimate your population growth and demands that will place on the community, then you can fall short with that infrastructure. So we're sort of conservative at both ends, but I believe it's the right type of conservative. If we were a business where we were looking to grow our profit margin, that sort of stuff, we may take a different perspective.
I agree. I actually think you need to underestimate on the budget, but sort of overestimate. Well, not really overestimate, but I think the reality is we are growing faster than what we planned, and that will come back to bite us at some time. And that's shown in the fact that we're doing more building approvals than we thought we would, but I don't know. It's just it'll come back to bite us in 5 years.
It's not that we haven't planned for the growth.
Right.
Like we understand that the growth is there. We're always looking forward to what does our trunk infrastructure need. In terms of the money we make off that, we don't overestimate that, so that we're conservative in our spending patterns and our approach to how we do things. So I understand what you're saying. We're very aware of the growth and we're planning for that, but we're just not counting our chickens before they hatch in terms of the money that may come in.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to endorse the Mayor's comments. We do take a conservative approach to our projected revenue streams. In relation to your issues around asset management, when those assets come online, those new roads or whatever, sewage works, they then filter into our asset registers which then inform our asset management plans. So we are, even though we're under projecting on our growth in our revenue, we are acknowledging the growth in our asset base through our asset management plans, and that's being factored back into our operating and capital budget bids.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr. Mayor, I do note what you said earlier about being interim given the end of financial year, but here it's $1.9 million operational deficit for the year. I do note in the other part it says $100,000 whatever surplus. So is there any explanation for that, or what and how likely is it to actually be a surplus?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the difference primarily, there are a number of contributing factors, but the difference primarily is the fact that we were still waiting for the May emergent event funds to be approved by the QRA, their operational income. And if we received them in a very short period of time, we were going to actually recognise those as revenue, and that would give us a surplus. At this stage, we're at the mercy of the QRA's process to approve and actually send those funds through to our bank account. So given the other adjustments at the end of the financial year, I'm not quite sure.
So it's really a timing issue. Get those payments. If we got them now, we would pay, we would have a surplus. But if we don't, then that will feed into the 23-24 financial year and will give us a healthy surplus.
So essentially we haven't been paid for the work we've already done.
Right.
Hopefully we'll be paid presumably in this financial year.
It's one of those funny ones where it goes against the matching principle that most accountants would buy.
Yep.
If they're saying no, that it really takes the form of a grant.
What number is that we're looking at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the current submission is $5.7 million.
So we've done $5.7 million worth of work that haven't been reimbursed by QRA.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart to move, Councillor Polly to second. Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr Mayor, we seem to be going along quite well financially, and especially given what's just been said that in effect we've had a operating surplus, so that's good for the year. So I'd like to thank staff for their diligence in providing this report and move that we accept it.
Councillor Polly.
If I may use another biblical reference going back to the ship with a rudder, smallest bit of the ship turns it, but that's no reflection on the staff and the massive amount of work that they've done. And I think they have turned the ship around, and it's good to see it's going in the right direction. So happy to move this report.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.5, the quarterly investment report to June 30, 23. We have Mr Lewis with Hadderall again.
Mr Mayor and councillors, this is our regular quarterly report. As in accordance with the 22-23 investment policy, we've made an undertaking to bring you a report to provide you information about the investments council currently hold. The report indicates that council's investments have performed better than we forecast they would perform. The interest rate increases have certainly assisted with that. We've actually taken the opportunity to, as part of our continual reviews, to place some term deposits with local banking and financial institutes, and we will continue to monitor that to ensure that council gets the best return on investment as possible.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Deborah.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just note that the interest we've received is 2.4 million. Is that right? So that goes into general funds. Is that right?
Through the mayor, it's 2.689 million. The 2.
So it's even more than what we budgeted.
Yes.
2.69. So I was just doing some figures there, and if you look at the rate rise that we voted through recently, I mean, that is essentially, I believe, of over 4%. So by earning this interest, does that mean that we've been able to do a lower rate rise? Is that how we look at that or not?
It is up through you, Mr Mayor. This is a bonus. It's one of those levers that we consider as part of the whole of the budget. If we were only earning $200,000, for example, we would certainly have to find the additional revenue to cover our operational funds.
Like we did when we first came in, we weren't earning interest, and now the interest rates have gone up. And I noticed that the forecast that we saw, I think it was yesterday, is that it's ongoing for around that figure as well, which is fantastic. Thank you.
I think that might have changed.
Any other questions? Councillor Polly.
Yeah, sorry. I've been asking for this report on investment for quite a few months, and suddenly here it is. So did I miss a meeting where this was?
I think you must have.
Every 3 months. Every 3 months it comes, mate.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we report this on a quarterly basis.
Oh, this one? Yeah, but I kept saying all the money's in the QTC. I said, why don't we shove it somewhere else with some investment strategy? And now you've got it in Wide Bay and Bendigo, which is fantastic. So in that report, could you do the other 4 banks? Was their rates no good? Are we just supporting locals?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we are constrained by our investment policy, so we can only invest a certain quantum of our funds in different ranked institutions. So where we make a value judgment and where interest rates in those other institutions are exceeding QTC, then we will take the opportunity to invest.
So our policy is less than 0.5% elsewhere than QTC, is it? That's a little amount.
Through you, Mr Mayor, in terms of the other banks, they weren't performing as well as we thought that they could compared to QTC. QTC obviously have massive investment power.
Okay.
So we continue to monitor them and we check their investment rates on a fairly regular basis.
Right.
If they start getting into the realms of what we believe is it's worthwhile for council to shift those funds, we will shift those funds.
Okay. So you're saying the other banks are okay credit rating wise, but their actual return on investment wasn't as good as QTC?
And we do have overall
Yep.
limits in what we can
Yes.
invest in those categories. I just haven't got those figures for me at the moment. I think it's the different cap might be triple B plus to a certain rank has its X percentage, and then we limit it further, saying that we can only invest a certain percentage within each institution in that category as well. So we're really taking a very conservative risk-averse approach to our investments.
Wouldn't be we're safe up to the federal government deposit guarantee, or are we not considered the same as a person who's investing 200 grand?
I think we're covered, but it's only 250,000.
Yeah, so you can stick in 250 and be safe. Yeah.
Councillor Devereux?
Thank you. Through the chair, with the ratings, the AAA and the triple B, it all with a bank comes back to what they can buy the money for to then do it, the interest rates for. So that's why, the ratings do have a big effect on the rates the banks can give. So.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there. Someone to move? Councillor Polly, someone to second. Councillor Devereux, Councillor Polly to speak.
Well, just thanks again for the update, guys, and looking forward to the next 3 months as we get a little bit more interest than we thought we were going to get.
Councillor Devereux?
I'm really pleased to see good amounts of money coming in for the ratepayer, so just having to hurt them. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
Just happy to proceed as is.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.6, procurement.
Through Mr Mayor, before I hand over to Mr Harrop and Ms Hatherall, I would like to make a comment in relation to the procurement meeting number 98 on the 6th of July, where there was a recommendation from the panel that council endorse a 30% variation to the Bonnick Road waste facility contract. Just wanted to note, for council to note that that was a minute from the procurement panel. I've subsequently spoken to the CEO, and our intention is to comply with the existing delegation to the CEO in that anything above a 5% delegation on that contract will be brought back to council for formal endorsement.
Thank you, Mr Lewis. I'll hand over to the team.
Hi. Morning, Mr Mayor. Morning, councillors. Okay, so before you today, seeking resolution are 7 items in total. There are 3 post-market recommendations for contract award. There are 2 contract variations, 1 contract extension, and there's 1 request for resolution for an exception from the requirement to tender or quote for the disposal of valuable non-current assets. Welcome. Any questions?
Councillor Smith.
Question for Mr O'Byrne. I see we're going to refresh the T140. In the past, we haven't paid travel. Are we changing that or not?
Through yourself, Mr Mayor. From it was noted that before we actually went out to tender that there was a potential that we weren't giving the contractors an opportunity to, if you like, price in travel in their prices. So what we did is we actually went back to the tenderers and actually gave them an opportunity to actually include price for travel and emphasise that for them to emphasise that in their submissions. And that was also based around regional aspects. So basically what we were saying is that if you're in Rainbow Beach and you're a contractor, you can put a price in which actually doesn't include travel because you don't need to. But if you're actually wanting to do work in the middle of Gympie, you can include travel in that price. So it's an all-encompassing price rather than travel being, if you like, an individual item.
So we've still got the deal where they have to put in a price per hour which will cover the work plus travel. what you're saying?
Yeah, I can clarify that.
Yeah, just in relation to the detail.
For you, Mr Mayor, yeah, so it was split into areas within the council region, being east, central, east and west. Depending on where they were based, they would give a price for each sector of that, which would, for example, if they were based in Rainbow Beach and asked to go to Kilkeven, they would incorporate within their hourly rate the price of travel to that area at the outset when they set up their schedule of rates.
I can't understand why we go along that line because.
Councillor Snowden, I know you're getting older. I just have a question on that, if I can just interrupt. How do you, as a business owner, give council a fair price if you're in Rainbow Beach and we ask you to tender for an hourly rate which includes travel, which could be all the way to Boobergin or Kilkeven or Manawatu? You're either they're going to put a lot of cream on it and the ratepayer misses out, or they're going to basically subsidise the ratepayer through the process. I can understand if you broke Gympie City up into 3 zones, it would be a lot easier to do that. But I mean, if your central, eastern and western zone, if the central zone includes the Mary Valley, how do you give a price for travel from Rainbow Beach to Gympie that includes Rainbow Beach to Imple? We've talked about this a lot. I've done a lot of quoting in my time, and I don't know how you answer this or how you meet those requirements with a pencil that is sharp enough to deliver value for money for the ratepayer, but at the same time, you're not shooting yourself in the foot. Because we're nearly 7,000 square kilometres. It's a big place. Can you give us assurances that we are A, getting value for money, and B, that the contract is not subsidising the work?
Yes, so for you, Mr Mayor, the way that it's set up, like I say, is split into 3 regions. So if they were in Rainbow Beach, they would be $100 an hour, for example. If they then came to Gympie, it would be $110 and $120 to go further into the West region. So each schedule of rates that's given isn't necessarily considered to add them on to the panel, add the supplier onto the panel. The rates that are submitted have to be fair and reasonable under assessment, but we would engage wherever is the best rate for Gympie Council, obviously for value for money. We would engage the suppliers within the region in which the work is based, wherever possible.
Yeah, I understand that as a first point of call, and but I just feel that we're asking contractors to tender on something that is so wide and so unknown that it's impossible. Like you can't genuinely factor in the cost of transportation in your price, for example, from Rainbow Beach to Manawatu or Boobergin, and that price also be related to Kilkeven, because they're a hell of a long way apart. Just as Rainbow to Gympie is very, very different in travel time to Rainbow to Imble. And if they're in the same slither, if we're doing a sort of a slither north and south, I don't know, and Warren would have a better idea about this. If you ask Warren as a bus operator to Councillor Polly to quote on providing a service from somewhere in that slither, he would be going, well, how long's a bloody piece of string? I wouldn't be quoting if I was a contractor, because you just don't know whether you're either going to make some money that day or you're going to be subsidising the rate.
So, through yourself, Mr Mayor, if I can just clarify, so the way that T140 is actually utilised is probably important to hear as well. So what we're actually doing is we're actually giving contractors an opportunity to say, okay, if you're going to do work within your own home region, give us a rate. If you're going to do work outside of that region, give us a rate. So that then enables council to actually look at those rates and say, okay, if we actually need to call on give a truck driver or truck operator some work, and we need them to do 2 days work, we can give them a call. We know their Rainbow Beach rate. We know that someone coming from Gympie or Kilkeithen, who also is a truck carter, is such and such a rate. So we've got that direct comparison for those couple of days' work. If we've got a substantial amount of work to do, what I'll say to you is what we are doing is actually going out and seeking prices. So we're not 100% simply looking at T140. All right, we're going to multiply that rate by 40 hours, come up with a price, and then make a judgment call. If we've got a package of work that we need to actually source them, we'll actually use T140 and the tenderers that have actually submitted, go to those tenderers in a select sense and say, please give us a price for a week's work. So then give them an opportunity to be fair and reasonable in relation to what they want to quote.
But I understand how that works.
Yep.
But if I'm asking you for a price to supply a truck for Gympie, and I'm asking you to supply a truck to service anywhere from Maryborough to Cairns, you're going to go, well, where's most of my work? You know, if most of my work's in Cairns and I've got a lot of travel time, I'm going to have a high price. So, and that's an extreme example of the circumstances that our contractors would face. There's a big, driving from Gympie to Kilkeithen is very different from Gympie to Manaba or Gympie to Boobergin. As a contractor, if you add an extra hour in, that's $100 each way. How do you factor that into your price? And Gympie to Gameri, roughly an hour. Gympie to Boobergin, add another half an hour to that. They're all in the same area, but the cost to the operator could be an extra $100, $200 or $300 a day in travel time. How do you factor that into your price? If I was a contractor, I simply would not tender, and I know contractors do because it's generally good to get work for council, but I don't know how you price this other than lump it up, like put a fair bit of pudding on it, because you would not want to be caught short. Because if you're spending $300 a day or $200 a day, you're not getting that back because you've come in with a sharp pen or pencil to try and get the work. Sooner or later you'll say, well, I've just got to go and get private work because they'll pay me for travel. I just don't. I feel for the contractors in these circumstances. I know how the system works. I understand the zones. I get all that. But as someone that has done a lot of quoting over nearly a decade, I would look at this and go, well, you tell me how long the piece of string is and I'll price it. But at the moment, you're just throwing me a ball of string and saying price it. And you can't do it effectively. And I'm concerned either A, we're not getting the best value for money, or B, the contractors in some circumstances are subsidising ratepayer work. And that may look good for us, but we need to be here for the contractors as well that employ people. So I don't know if there's a way to resolve that. But I have serious reservations about the system that we've adopted.
Again, Mr. Mayor, if I can just comment there as well. So this is definitely council officers wanting to be fair and reasonable as well. And so the first step is to actually have something which actually incorporates travel and actually put that front and centre. So that's what we've done. What we do when we engage a contractor, and let's say it's an out-of-the-box scenario and we're actually wanting to engage a carter of goods, and it's out of the norm, if you like, from what T140 definitively gives. We actually go to the contractor and say, we've got your price, would you like to do 2 days work for us? Have that discussion as well, is that, look, this is way out, or it's very difficult to get to. Are you okay with your price? If it's not, then we'd negotiate that.
But then what's the point of the T140 and the rate?
To give us because the majority of instances, would be simple and straightforward. It's really those exceptional circumstances that we would actually not hang out a contractor to dry, we'd give them an opportunity. But if we give them an opportunity, but also give the other three contractors an opportunity to look at their price. So it'd essentially be a mini tender.
That's fine but even your general maintenance work, we've got contractors that work for us 5 days a week. If they travel from Gympie to Booberton and they get there, it's a 2-hour job. How do you build that into your hourly rate?
There's a minimum 4 hour.
Minimum 4 hours. Yep. Even then, it's, you've got 3 hours to get there and back, and you get paid for 4 hours.
Well then, for you,
So it's a 7-hour day that you're getting paid 4 hours for.
You would obviously get the minimum of 4 hours, and then whatever hourly hours you commit to after that would be paid at your schedule of hourly rate for that particular area you're working in.
So what you're saying is they charge us for 7 hours?
No, for you, Mr. Mayor. So 4 hours would be minimum, and then if they work 5 hours, they'd charge an extra hour.
They're only working 4, but it's taking them 3 hours to get there, an hour and a half to drive there. Do the 4 hours, an hour and a half to drive home. 7 hours involved, paid for 4. How do you work that out?
Yeah, for you, Mr. Mayor, I would imagine that would not be the norm. We would not engage a contractor supplier.
I think it is the norm in
Travel
the
that.
Western area anyway, as far as I can see, because a lot of our work is out around Gameri, Booberton. Probably 50% of our work is in those areas, and you're going to wear that every day of the week.
Yeah. Of the 54 suppliers, I haven't got the exact locations of each one of those particular suppliers under the category which they submitted a rate for. But I'll hand to Graham to talk about the management of the distribution of the work by area.
Look, probably more than a point. I think if we can take on board your concerns, Councillor, because I think they're quite valid. And as I said, so the attempt that we've made is to at least put something in place which gives an opportunity for the tenders to include travel, whereas before that wasn't there. And so we weren't comparing apples with apples, we weren't giving people fair.
Well, the current 140 we've got now is that system, is it not?
So,
where the current 140 we have now is the same system that you're proposing now?
Yeah, it's the same contract, but with a varying approach, if you like. It's actually, as we said, we've zoned it and we said, okay, please include travel costs if you're going to provide work outside the zone. Can I just give you the commitment that what we'll do is we'll come back to council with a summary of how that's going, and I think it's important that we actually get some feedback from the contractors as well. So we shouldn't just go blindly. We should actually make sure that it is working out to be fair and reasonable. And if it's not, I'd suggest we come back to council and go, we need to revise this.
Well, I know from the current system I've had a lot of feedback from contractors that have said, as far as council goes, that's the last resort now, because I can make more money working for other people, and I won't bother turning up to council because they will not pay me travel.
Can I just clarify that?
Have we ever considered, as part of the T140, to have an on-site rate? So when they're on the machine and they're doing their work, they get X, and then a rate for travel. And that, if they're, for example, stationed in Rainbow Beach, that's where the depot is, and we want to engage them and to come into Gympie, we know it's roughly an hour by truck, we can factor that in. And then you can compare apples with apples, and you can sit down and go, well, we know what their 5-tonne digger is X amount of dollars per hour. To get that on site is going to cost us X amount. We don't need to continually go out to mini tenders and get different quotes from people, because we can sit down and go, well, that's what John Smith excavations and truck hire is going to cost us to go from here to Booberton, and it's done. And then the contractor can determine how sharp they want their pencil to be, and they can do it with absolute certainty that if they drive for an hour, they're going to get X. If they drive for 2 hours, they're going to get 2X, and they can work it out, and they can work out what area they want to discount or be very competitive in to be more appealing to us as a someone as a client that they would like to do work for. For me, that system, you would sharpen your pencil for, because you knew what you were getting at the end. The current system, I could give you a price and think, well, I want to keep it pretty sharp, so I pick up a bit of work, and you base it for around, Gameri, and I could end up with work in Boobergen and have to sort of wear a bit. And as Councillor Spurgeon pointed out, as a contractor, sooner or later you go, you know what, I'm better off stepping back and going into the private sector because I'm financially better off. But just from an understanding, to me that seems a bit more easy to work out.
Mr. Mayor, can I give you a commitment? What we'll do is between now and the next council meeting, we'll actually contact each of the submitters, 240, have a discussion with them and get feedback, and bring that feedback back to council. And with that feedback to council, if we feel that we need to review or revise how we're tackling this, then we'll also bring that back to council as a recommendation.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. I've got 7 questions. I had 5 and then you started to talk and I've got 7 now. So we'll run through them. The first question has to do with the surf lifesaving quote that we've got there. Can I ask, how many surf lifesavers does that include? Do we know? Or is it just for a time frame?
Is that the one that, that came
on
to...
page 20...
Yeah, I think those details are in the report when it came to council.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's just telling you that what went through procurement panel, executive leadership team, and then subsequently came to council last ordinary meeting. For the surf lifesavers.
So he's just asking for the number of surf lifesavers that contract covers.
Ah, right.
And I think it was in the report, but it's something we can dig up.
In the report.
Whose risk is it? If something does happen, is it because we subcontracting or hiring someone, is that then their risk if something happens there? Or is it council's risk because we're paying? I'm just wondering.
I think they would hold the liability.
Or what's something...
If someone drowns or...
Oh, right. Yeah, well, they would cover that.
That's on them? Good.
If we engaged in a contractor that wasn't appropriately qualified, we would carry the risk.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we come to same page, 27, and this has to do with the fuel. Is that around the same figures that we normally go for there?
Yeah, the T145, are you referring to?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that for you, Mr. Mayor, that came to council last month for resolution and was resolved. So the question was around: is that an estimated? Yeah, it's an estimated price for the delivery of the fuel based on our current usage. Yeah.
Wonderful. The solution as a service for award interpretation. What is that?
Which page?
Same page.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's the awarded interpretation. That's a software package.
Software package.
The
software package.
It's a software package.
Software package. Yeah.
Will apply to payroll.
Thank you. Next page, so page 28. This has to do with the recommendation to approve variation of the contract. Why have a contract for that sort of thing if it's just going to be varied all the time? What's the reasoning behind it?
Sorry, there was a recommendation for the variation.
Imaging as a service.
Yeah, so what happened there was during the through you, Mr. Mayor, during the evaluation of the PIAS agreement that was submitted, there was a reduction in the requirement for a certain number of printers to fall off and not have the requirement to be integrated within our security element. It was highlighted once the contract was awarded that was important and we required that. So we added that back on, yeah. So through the negotiations, it got a bit lost, if you like, within council as to what the requirement fully was, and that was added back in, and that was the subsequent variation of 23.
And that's fair enough. Thank you very much for that. On the next page, 29, now this has to do with the Gympie Gold Museum flood repairs.
Yep.
So we've decided, council organisations decided not to demolish the Scout Hall. That's my reading of that. So when will that be demolished? And because it's still, the funds still have to be found to demolish it at some point, I would imagine.
That would probably be something that comes back to council for a budget
Yeah.
allocation.
Things rarely get cheaper though, so I'm just wondering what the logic is to put it off.
Have to take that one on notice and come back to you.
Okay, we have other buildings that will be demolished around town. Is it perhaps that they're going to be bundled up maybe, or?
I don't think that was the intention.
Oh, okay.
But we'll take that on notice and come back to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I do
For you,
wonder if
Mr Mayor,
it's a saving.
that was removed in order to meet the required budget, as stated in there, and with discussion of key stakeholders, that was agreed to remove the demolition of that particular.
We do extend the budgets and stuff, ask for variations from time to time. So I do wonder if that's, I'd like that explained, if that's okay. Nearly at the end. Page 30. And again, this is on the museum. I'm going to go back to the tarp. Will that include the tarp being removed? Is that part of it? It's a bit above the flood level, but...
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it was worth a shot. And finally...
TARP is already existed, councillor.
So heritage, it will be by the time we get to it. Yeah, so that's my fear. It's not really, but it's... All right, so page 35. Well, it has to do with this whole... supply of plant hire again. I was just surprised that we had late entries that were still included when we've got such a, the applications was really good. Can you just explain why late entries have been included when normally I would imagine they wouldn't be?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, we would include wherever possible under instruction. We would take each supplier's situation or mitigating circumstances in order to see if they would be assessed and added in to the evaluation. That is generally done on a case-by-case basis. What we tend to do when we're trying to support the local community with such an endeavour as the T140 is we find that their ability to maybe deliver submissions through the correct channels in the correct way and a full understanding isn't necessarily always up to the standard of a large corporation, which would be expected. And so we do tend to look at those circumstances and those particular suppliers who are within the local community in order to engage them and give them an opportunity to gain work from council. We would take that mitigation and then review it and make a decision based on whatever came in. So it may well be that they just weren't able to submit through the vendor panel system for whatever reason. And you will subsequently see that there were post-closed notifications for requests for information and clarification as part of this process in order to give the local community of suppliers the best chance to gain a foothold and be added to the panel.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, councillors? Now we have a number of recommendations there. We generally go through them one at a time for procurement. So recommendation 1, is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Mill, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to... what am I thinking? Yeah, it's just basically what's happened in the procurement panel. I'd like to give thanks to the staff for the answer to the question I asked about the 30%, whatever we call it, variation, delegation, which I was a bit concerned about. So it's good to know that was all back to the standard. So I'm happy to move. Good to hear what's happening in the procurement panel.
Councillor Mill.
I'm happy to receive and note the minutes of the procurement panel. It's good to have them come to the meeting and make them open and transparent to the community. So happy to see them.
2 speakers for the recommendation, speakers against. Now the speakers for. Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Recommendation 2, someone to move. Councillor Fredman, Councillor Devereux to second. Councillor Fredman to speak.
We need to keep the museum afloat, so to speak. In fact, when I see the value of 600 grand, that'd buy a pretty good boat. A future council can't possibly let this situation continue where our artefacts, our history is subject to flooding and the damage and the loss. But nonetheless, this is essential. I recommend it.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Yeah, the flood, the rain event devastated the museum, and we did lose a lot of our local heritage, which is just tragic. I am very pleased to see that we're going to put some money into it and try and fix things up. Thank you.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Now speakers for. Councillor Spoon.
Councillor Freedman does remind me of Noah. Maybe we could build it after that 600,000.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Freedman to close.
No, Mr Mayor, all good.
With that,
Well, it was tempting, Mr Mayor, but we have to maintain decorum in this meeting, and we have to sometimes ignore the comments from some of the older councillors over the other side.
with that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Resolution 3, recommendation 3. Quite a long one there. Is there someone to move? Councillor Freedman. Councillor Stewart second. Councillor Freedman.
Look, there was fair debate over this. I support it because no system's going to be perfect. We do need to utilise the private sector for all the times when we have work that we can't get through ourselves. We need transport as part of that. It keeps the wheels turning from our depot operations perspective, and let's just say, without it being perfect, it's still been well researched in my opinion, and I support the recommendation.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. It's up to the contractors to decide yes or no to accepting work. And I guess if no one accepts work, we then go out and ask other contractors and they lift up the price. So that's just part of life at the moment with bypass being built and things like that. There's a lot of competition for contractors. So there's always that flexibility, but it gives a base rate, I guess, for staff to work off in terms of who to bring in as contractors. So I support the recommendation.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Councillor Smoot.
I don't want to be a nag, but we are a business. We should pay commercial rates as far as I'm concerned. Anywhere else you get paid travel. So I can't see why councils are different. If we've got a bit of competition out there with the bypass and so forth, and we have trouble at the moment securing contractors, and I think that's the main reason why we can't secure contractors, because we don't pay enough. And that's my opinion anyway.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Mill.
It was just refreshing to see that we are moving forward in our procurement of these type of tenders, and our processes to start incorporating some of those considerations that have had concerns raised. Yeah, and it does, I understand it does give a baseline to actually do further negotiations, so happy to support this one.
Councillor Waldock.
Through the chair, speaking for, it'd be nice to see the 40% for local benefit on the weighing be a little bit higher. Sorry, the pricing a little bit lower and local benefits higher. But having said that, I have noticed that council are using a lot more local contractors, where it changes the town from a good town with a good economy to a great town with a great economy. Those funds go back out to the locals, and it's good to see that it's really noticeable. Thank you.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Collins.
Before I speak for or against it, but I actually wanted to ask a question, because in the motion it says we're doing this for 12 months with 4 12-month extensions. Does that mean if we approve this, we're not going to see this panel again for 5 years potentially, or in 12 months' time you're going to go through the process again? So I know you don't want to waste time, because I'm just thinking of a new operator comes to town, he wants to get on T140, he's got no chance for 5 years.
Yes, we must have had this discussion at another meeting.
Sorry. Yeah.
But the staff do add new contractors as they come. So there is opportunity for contractors who do come to town, move up here and want to be a part of it. They can be put on that the T140 panel.
Excellent. Well, in that case, I'm for the motion then. And it's good to see so many well-known local companies on the list.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Freedman to close.
look, it's not perfect, but it's worked well enough in most of the region in the recent past. It's essential for us. Let's get on with it. Let's do business with these people and get the jobs done. We are behind. There's a lot of our maintenance in the regions, and this helps us get to the end and provide a satisfactory service.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Stewart, Polly, Baldock, Hartwig, Jensen, Devro, Fredman, Milne. Against? Councillor Smurden. The motion is carried. We're up to resolution 4. Someone to move? Councillor Polly. Someone second? Councillor Stewart. Councillor Polly to speak.
I suppose I'd better. I want it to go ahead. And as you read in the report, it's not about just upping the price. There's a lot more rock in the area, and it's just covering some of those hourly rate costs that were not foreseeable until they start digging a hole. So happy to move it up.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, happy that we saw stages 9 and 10 of the south side, so let's move on this delayed project.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 5, 20% price variation. Someone to move? Councillor Polly? Councillor Baldock, Councillor Polly to speak.
Just like in school, number 5 comes after number 4, so I'm happy to. 5 is necessary as part of 4, so happy to move it.
Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, this is just a simple variation, unforeseen extras. I mean, like there's rock and then there's gippy rock. So, approve.
And the south side rock even worse.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
I'm just happy to see that Southside's built on such solid foundations, even if it is costing us money. But
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 6, which is 1 after 5. Someone to move? Councillor Fredman. Someone to second? Councillor Stewart. Councillor Fredman to speak.
Project management is so important in delivering what we want and getting value for money. And this is entirely in order. They're a good contractor and they're getting the work done and we have to push on. So go for it.
Councillor Stewart.
It's taking quite some time to get the flood repairs done, so we need to keep going with the work, and so yep, happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Fredman to close.
And Mr Mayor, get on with.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 7, in relation to Microsoft licensing. Someone to move? Councillor Devro. Councillor Milne to second. Councillor Devro to speak.
It's just one of those things that we need as an organisation. It's expensive, which is a shame, but it's going to help staff do their job better, and that's important. Thank you.
Councillor Milne.
Yeah, just seconding that. It does. It's an IT system. We need it. We need it to function. If it fails, all of this goes down. So have it continues.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devro to close.
More to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 8. Wow, it's quick out of we want to try that again, Councillor Devro. Councillor Devro to move. Councillor Smurden to second. Councillor Devro to speak.
This is fantastic to see. I remember early on in the term asking why we don't do it, and I was told it has to go to an auction, all the rest of it. It seemed like such a waste when we've got so many community groups that really could do with a little bit of a hand. So I'm thrilled to be able to put my hand up for this one. Thank you.
Councillor Smurden.
Okay, Councillor Devro's sentiments, and happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devro to close.
I'd just like to thank staff for actually making this come about, because it's a small thing, as far as everything that staff have to do. It is, as I say, a very big thing for these organisations, so thank you very much.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We will have a break in our proceedings. We have two very special guests here today. So we will. You want to come down, Jordan? It's in the limelight. You want to stand or sit down? What do you want to do? If you want to stand, right. So Georgia competed in the National Games in Launceston last October. Had a very successful meet down there. She won 2 gold medals, a silver and a 5th place, which resulted in a silver medal overall and gained her selection to represent Australia at the Special Olympic World Games in Berlin from June the 17th to the 25th this year. In Berlin, on the world stage, she received a bronze medal. Which one's the bronze medal for vault? Do they mark them for the event, or do they? No, they just hand them out, right? A bronze medal for the vault, a bronze medal for the beam, a 4th place in the bar, and a bronze medal for the floor. And that gave her an overall ranking of 7th in the world, which is Georgia has been competing in gymnastics at the Special Olympics in Gympie since 2016. She is a born and bred local and lives on a family's dairy farm. And like most farm kids, up early, working hard, finishes when the sun goes down and probably goes into the shed and do a bit of other things. So George's dad's family have been dairying at Bells Bridge for many decades, and the Nugent family have a long association with dairy, with the dairy industry. George's mum worked at centre management at Gympie Central and Goldfields Plaza for over a decade, so they have a strong family connection to our region. So well done, Georgia. Congratulations. And it's great to see a humble young lady representing our region so wonderfully on the world stage. So
Thank you.
Well done. And Natalie is a coach, Natalie Upsall, who she attended the World Games in Berlin and was selected as Australian assistant coach for gymnastics, which is a pretty well done. We often don't talk much about the talent that we have in Gympie, and it's great that we can know and understand some of the people we have in our community. Natalie's been working as a coach with Special Olympic Gymnastics since 2004, when she had an athlete join the club who wanted to compete but found it hard in the mainstream as she had an intellectual disability. So she went looking to see what was out there for those with disabilities and found Special Olympics. She's attended 5 World Games, 3 as assistant coach and 2 as head coach: Shanghai, Athens, LA, Abu Dhabi and Berlin. So that's a new passport, that one. Natalie's family connection to Gympie. Her mum lived here, and in 1992 we moved with our 3 kids. Bought Images car detailing and worked before selling up and buying Nuts Bakery at Gonalda while coaching gymnastics. So congratulations, Natalie. Thank you for your commitment, not only to gymnastics but also to those in the Special Olympic movement, and also the wonderful representation you've done for the Gympie region on the world stage. So thank you very much. So we'll adjourn now for a morning tea. So we get a chance to ask Georgia a few questions if you feel okay. But there's tea and coffee next door and something to eat. So we'll adjourn the meeting and get to meet 2 great residents. we're good to go. We are. Thank you. We've got everyone here. Welcome back, council staff in gallery. We'll continue with our meeting. Section 7.1, public bin and recycling policy. This is exciting reading, I know, but.
Oh, that's important.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought Ms. Stengel with me today. She's all across this policy. It's a fairly simple, I hope, update, but I'll let Alex present it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for letting me speak through this. It's basically, I guess, an administrative change. We've just the public waste and recycling bin policy is up for review. We've reviewed it. We've made some minor amendments as discussed in our previous workshop, and I guess we're presenting that today for the consideration and support of council.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smurden.
Mr. Stengel, does this new policy mean that there's any reduction in public bins at all?
No, not at all that I'm aware of. It's more. It more gives context to, excuse me, gives context around when we would install additional bins and the like in the area. So there may be some consolidation in some areas should it be warranted, but I guess most of the public places that I've looked at to date have actually needed an expansion of public bins. So no.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Through the chair, I've just got 3 questions. Page 454, so this is page 2 of the actual policy. I was just wondering, could you define parkland? Is that, it's not defined anywhere. So we've got 2 bins per hectare of parkland, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's space that's allocated through our open space network and identified within our asset management plans for parks.
So it's not a specific zoning?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that those parks are actually zoned open space.
Open space, and it's only open space then, or is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are tracts of land such as the River to Rail Trail. Excuse me, the River to Rail Trail, which may be included in other zonings, and there may be some community purpose land, such as. In actual fact, it isn't community purpose land, but there was a block at Rainbow Beach where we may have bins that relate to community purpose land. But yes, if it is what the community would ordinarily understand as parkland and it has a zoning that matches, then yes, that would be.
Thank you. My second question, are we going to move bins? Is that what this is about, where it says, just putting bins on footpath corners and there's no plans to move any? It's not going to cost us money if we...
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to reiterate, this is a policy that we adopted 2 years ago. We've been running to this policy. It really governs the placement of new bins. Wonderful. And the request for bins from businesses and for events and for the RV sites. It isn't, Alex referred to consolidation. I don't believe we have actually yet consolidated any bins. It does allow for that, but we haven't done any, and all we've done is use the policy to validate additional bins.
Wonderful.
There's no cost to us in adopting the policy in that we will automatically have to go out, review all the bins and put new ones in.
That was my concern.
It'll be on a request basis.
Thank you. My third question has to do with the business bins, as you just mentioned. Do business premises receive bins based on the rates paid, as in if there's one premises with 2 bins, they get 2 bins, or is it on the premises, even if there's 2 ratepayers, 1 bin?
Sorry, through the chair. Look, my answer to that question would be, depending on the requirement of the commercial operation, it would require potentially a permit or a DA, and bins would be needed to be provided by that particular business for their own purpose. So public, and that's, I guess, part of this policy is public bins for litter should not be used for commercial purposes.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just to maybe clarify a little bit, either business requires bins for its business. They do that through the rating model and through a separate request system. This is for the bins that may be put on a town centre street, such as in Imble or in Rainbow Beach, whereby the bin will be placed in an urban shopping area for the general public to use, and not necessarily for business rubbish to be put into it. We have had issues where businesses have considered putting rubbish in. We've not got any of those at the moment, and we speak to them and explain the situation and offer to provide additional bins. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor? Councillor Smith?
Yeah, it's just wondering, bins at truck rest stops, like in particular the ones heading out to Kilkee, I've driven past those on many occasions and there's rubbish everywhere. Is that our responsibility or the main roads?
Through the Chair, combination, if it's on that particular stretch that you're referring to, I believe it's the main roads, and we have actually been in contact with them recently. We've received a number of complaints, and it's also on our radar to see if we can look at improved servicing of that particular location and also some compliance, because we believe that the material dropped off is not general litter per se.
I think it's
illegal dumping. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as Council will be aware, we do have the recent delegation, and Council resolved to accept the delegation for illegal dumping. That was reported in the press this week, how that's going. That officer would investigate rubbish on the floor near those bins where it's overloaded, because that constitutes illegal dumping and illegal dumping matters. So it is covered from two fronts, and we are aware of some of those issues.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? Councillor Baldock, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Mr. Mayor, I think perhaps the most important line of the policy is carry in, carry out. People need to take responsibility for their own rubbish. I'm sure I'm not the only person who gets a bit tired of picking up litter along roadsides when people are just taking, and same within parks and whatever. People need to take responsibility. In the end, you go to somewhere like Japan and there's not many public rubbish bins and there's no rubbish on the ground, because there's that cultural thing. And yes, we provide a service with rubbish, public rubbish bins, but in the end, people need to be responsible for themselves and the rubbish they create. So I'm glad that this policy gives guidelines to where bins should be, and hopefully we can encourage people to be more responsible.
Councillor Baldock?
Thank you, through the Chair. This is a cut and paste policy with a few more changes to suit the times. So happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, happy to move.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. White Bay Burnett Regional Waste Plan, another fascinating document. There's probably a bit of a personal joke there as well, but I'll hand over to Mr. Burns and Mr. Stengel again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we have presented this at the workshop, and we had an interesting discussion at the workshop about the content and the meetings and the subject matter, we'll take the report as read, but essentially we're seeking to obtain councillor support for this so we can advise the group that we are a supportive council. We are happy to answer questions, and Ms. Stengel's here to support those questions.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Through the Chair, looking at the attachment 2 here, which is Regional Waste Management Plan Cost Benefit Analysis, and I'm just looking at it's 485 of our documents, but it's page 8 of that particular document. And I'm just having a look. It says expected exhaustion of capacity, and for Gympie it's 2028. Am I right in reading that? I know that some of the dates are earlier, but of all the regions, we're the one that's coming up to the hard wall quicker than the others.
Through the Mayor, Yes, that's correct. Obviously, that's the eastern cell extension and its lifespan at the current landfilling capacity. So that's correct.
So the other councils, even North Burnett and South Burnett, and that they're in a far better position than what we are by the looks of things. Yes. Okay, thank you.
And I think the point Councillor Devereux is highlighting is a pertinent one for ratepayers to understand, that future planning needs to be done, and it hadn't been done. So the eastern cell buys us a little bit of time until we can get a long-term solution in place that will put us in good stead like some of the other local government entities.
I think it's important too, just to mention that you are doing a fantastic job at this, and the team should be congratulated on the steps forward that you are making. So, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, councillors? Councillor Stewart.
Could you, Mr Mayor, could you explain the benefits and perhaps disadvantages of this, and especially when we're also looking southwards for our coordination of waste management services?
Yep, so through the Mayor, look, the advantages of supporting this document is there will be state funding at a regional level, and participating in this suite of councils and arrangement will open up opportunities for council. So I believe that that's one of the benefits. As far as moving south, there's obviously, we are a very large LGA, so I believe that, I think it will be very, I think as a council, it's paramount that we maintain relationships between all of the existing LGAs and look for opportunities both to the south and to the north. But this is the current framework that's been presented, so being a part of this report and group of councils will, I guess, seek to secure funding for various projects outlined in the plan. So that's, I guess, the benefit. Does that answer it?
Any questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move? Councillor Stewart. Someone to second? Councillor Devereux. Councillor Stewart, speak.
I guess we do need to coordinate with councils to the north of us and west of us, and there is some opportunities for funding. I did express one concern I had about the report before, which was that there's no explanation of acronyms or important terms, so hopefully that we included in further reports. So happy that we received this report and future reports.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. Again, it's good to see some bold steps being taken in this area. I realise a lot of residents in our region and ratepayers won't understand that a lot of what we do is out of our hands. We're told to do it, and it's expensive. And I wish that when they told us to do it, that they paid for it as well. That would make things much better for us. But yeah, it's got to be done. It's for the betterment of the region. So cracking on, loving it.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? The other speakers for. Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 7.3, I believe Councillor Milne has a declaration to make.
Well, there's 2 recommendations. Two recommendations?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there are 2 recommendations.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah.
Right, another line. Okay, the second recommendation. Councillor Stewart to move. Councillor Milne to second. Councillor Stewart to speak.
Nothing further to add to the previous.
Councillor Milne.
I'll listen to the updates on what's coming out of the plan and brought back to us and see where we actually can do something possibly. So yeah, happy to second it.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Speakers against. Now speakers for. Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 7.3.
Yep.
Declaration.
Mr Mayor, I, Councillor Jess Milne, inform the meeting that a declarable conflict of interest in this matter due to my position of the President of the Claw Coast Youth Activity Project Incorporated, and on behalf of the organisation authored the letter to Council requesting this action. I believe that I can consider this matter impartially and in the best interest of the community. Plus, I have knowledge of pertinent local information that's relevant to this matter, therefore I'm requesting to remain in the meeting.
Councillors, Councillor Milne has made the declaration. Is there any questions of her before we go to the vote? Is there someone to move that Councillor Milne stay in the meeting?
I'll move it.
Do we need to move one that's spaced? I can't remember what we've done in the past. Is there someone to move that Councillor Milne stay in the meeting?
Could I ask a question?
You certainly can.
I was just thinking, if it can do it now, what information would you know that's might help the discussion? Because I'm just feeling like you're too close. You're very close to this thing.
There has been local history and local representation discussions that we've had in the past. I am the local representative and I'm also a local resident there. So I do retain information that is relevant to those local input discussions and also history on the actual facility itself in general. So that's why.
Would that information not already be in the report? Is there stuff missing in the report that we don't know about?
Well, there may be, because I'm not quite sure what questions came up, and as it has been advised before, by Department External, there could have been questions answered easier last time this matter was considered if I had remained in the room, because, yeah, I couldn't answer them.
I actually don't think we need to have a move or a second on this. I think we just we vote either in favour or against the councillor remaining in the room. That's what we've done in the past. Yeah, it's got a mental blank. That's correct. Yeah, okay. Any other questions of Councillor Milne? So the councillor has requested that they remain in the room. All those in favour that the councillor remain in the room? Please raise. Councillor Stewart, in favour. Those against?
Yeah.
Councillor Polly, Councillor Warlock, Councillor Spurden, Councillor Hartwig, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Devro, Councillor Redmond. The councillor will need to leave the room. Item 7.3, I'll hand over to Mr. Burns and start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've brought Ms. with me along today. She's intimately involved and engaged with this particular report. I'm presuming there will be questions. We will take the report as read, noting that there are 4 recommendations in the report, and that is as an outcome of the previous discussion that happened at the workshop. The STARC has some salient points regarding those recommendations and the workshop outcomes, and so I'll hand over to Ms. Stark.
Good morning, councillors. As outlined by my director, this matter was brought to council recently, and most recently at the workshop on the 12th of July. At that workshop, councillors raised varying views about the naming proposal, and on that basis we have brought a range of options back to council to vote on today. Councillors also raised a couple of questions for staff to follow up on in regard to the online survey, and also in regard to a proposal to name the interior of the building and signage to the front of the building. Both of those matters have been covered off in the report, and we will take that as read. However, councillors, since the council workshop, we have reached out specifically to Scouts Queensland in relation to recommendation 2. Given that there are a range of options for the councillors, we undertook due diligence, reached out to Scouts Queensland to get their views on the naming of the hall. And through the chair, I'd like to present that to councillors today. This is only very new to hand. We reached out to the facilities and risk manager, also spoke to regional and state leaders on the matter. So Scouts Queensland acknowledged the history of the site and the very many people in the community who have memories of the hall and contributed to the hall. And in doing so, they would very much support a plaque or some kind of historical depiction commemorating that history. In terms of Scouts Queensland current practices with their venues, they very much take the view that venues are community hubs, and where there are active Scout clubs present, they put branding on the side of their buildings. However, their current practice is not to name their buildings Scout halls, and that's to do with creating a multi-purpose kind of community hub feeling. So we thought that was pertinent to bring to councillors' knowledge today in regard to recommendation 2. Beyond that, Chair, there's no further research that's been undertaken in relation to this. So over to you and the councillors.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Warder.
At the workshop, I asked a question, what's the financial burden or financial cost to council or the ratepayer to have this hall renamed? Or, sorry, named, because it doesn't have a name.
Thank you, councillor. Indeed, you did ask that question at the time, and apologies that hasn't been quantified per se. In terms of the time taken between last council meeting and this one, I've undertaken 1 phone call to Scouts Hall and 1 email to the Scouts Hall, and a couple of phone calls in relation to the other matters. There hasn't been any further expense since the last one.
I just have a question in relation to the extra information presented. I understand Scouts in general, as an organisation, probably don't name their halls. Do they understand that sometimes a hall may be named that simply because that's the historical context for the community? And it's more of a community name, not an organisation name?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we didn't have that discussion specifically with the Scouts organisation, but they are aware from previous discussions with them that communities do call halls Scout Hall, and there are some. I think I did a bit of a search. I did a bit of a search, and I can't recall, but it was well over 100 Scout halls in Queensland, I think.
Councillor Jensen and Councillor Deborah.
So a big organisation like Scouts Queensland's not embedded in King Bay and probably doesn't care. There was a monument out the front, a plaque that's gone missing, I believe, that said this is the Scout Hall that was opened on this date by this person and rah-rah. I haven't been down there myself to check. This is just someone's told me that it's gone missing. So if that could be located, that'd be good. I think we should be listening to the community and not listening to people in big organisations that probably shouldn't be making decisions for small communities. When the community have said that they like the name the Scout Hall, not Scouts Hall, you'll find the majority of that is the Scout Hall. I think we just need to listen. I mean, that's the whole idea of community consultation, is to find out what the community want.
Councillor Deborah.
Thank you. Can I ask, when did that letter come in?
From Scouts.
From Scouts. Monday the 24th of July. Two days ago. And that was through the chair, that was when the information was sought. So I reached out on that day and it came back that day. So through the chair, it is very new information, and the reason that was undertaken at this time rather than previously is that the naming suggestion up until that point had been Empress Street Community Hall, not the Scout Hall, and the Scout Hall name came up through the consultation rather than, it wasn't a naming suggestion per se. But given then councillors sought to have a range of names brought back, we thought it was obviously important to reach out in case we...
It's more that, I mean, it could have been emailed out to us. It's just having it presented.
I did wonder the same.
Thank you. I will just say that I can understand the reservations around Scout Hall because, you know, when you think of a Scouts Hall, that you think, oh, well, that's where the Scouts are now and we don't have a Scout there. Perhaps something that could be considered is Old Scout Hall, so that it's clear that it's it's something it used to be and not necessarily. Yeah. I personally, and I recognise that Councillor Waldock has concerns over the cost. given the response we've had, I would like it to be considered that we go back to the community and ask them, one against the other, what they would actually like. Because although we've had more people say no to Emperor Street Hall, we still have more people that have said yes to Emperor Street Hall than have said Scout Hall. Although Scout Hall wasn't one of the recommendations, so that's been a push behind the scenes there for that one. So I don't know how the other councillors feel about that.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, I guess I'm a bit concerned about the gross misuse of statistics. So how, statistics, there's always a margin of error, and the way these statistics are collected, there is a huge margin of error, and so just taking raw numbers is an issue, and I think Councillor Devereux's alluded to that. So what is the community that we are trying to measure? Is it everybody in the Gympie region? Is it just people down at Cooloola Coast or whatever? What's the best way of representing that community in the results? I've no doubt these are wrong because the name that's most familiar from what I talk to people down that way is Buffalo Hall, and no one mentioned Buffalo Hall. So, yeah, or maybe one did. So I'm just sure we can get out the community again, but if we're going to just rely on that in terms of the statistics only, then that is a problem. Going to community consultation is about getting the ideas in from the community and then assessing them, and then we make a decision. I just, having studied statistics, I'm just a bit wary that we don't misuse them.
Councillor Smith.
Ms. Stark, so the next step forward is to use one recommendation and vote on that. Would that be right?
That's correct.
I think
you're wanting to.
You know, how much can you spend overall? It's, and from my short time in Tin Can, I've got the feeling from all the residents that they do like the Scout Hall more, and I would like to move that we adopt recommendation number 2.
Except to make it the Scout Hall and not Scout.
Yeah, make it the Scout Hall.
So you want an amendment to recommendation 2 that it be called the Scout Hall?
Yeah.
The Scout Hall. And that's moved by Councillor Smurden, seconded Councillor Jensen. Councillor Smurden to speak.
Like I just said, it's we're naming a hall, we're not spending $1 million. We've done community consultation. There's also been community consultation by other people. As far as I can find, the general feeling is that a lot of the residents like Scout Hall, and that's what I want to make. Happy to move.
Councillor Jensen.
It's the reason we do community consultation. That's what the community wants. It's what they get. And, you know, we can't name it on the whim of one person that wants to call it something else. So I say to go with the Scout Hall. Definitely, because that's what the community have spoken about.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Councillor Stewart.
Can we ask questions?
You come up with this often, Councillor. You're asking me to be flexible on the standing orders. All right.
Well, I just say, but it would seem Councillor Smurden conducted his own community research, which is separate to the one we did, and it's come up with a completely different answer. So I'm just, that's what sort of threw me a bit.
Well, I guess there was suggestions from the community during the consultation process that the Scout Hall was the name that they wanted, and Councillor Smurden's done his own consultation, which has sort of reaffirmed that view in his mind. It's up to you, Councillor, to make your mind up based on the information you have before you.
Right. So now are we voting on recommendation 2?
Recommendation 2.
And not the other 3 at all?
No, that's right. Single recommendation 2.
So if recommendation 2 gets up, that's the end of it. If it loses, then we look at the other recommendations.
That's correct. Right. Yeah. So is it, we've had 2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Councillor Stewart.
There's a scout hall on what was the edge of Brisbane, it's not the edge of Brisbane anymore, which my father and other parents built back about 1970. Just along Moggle Creek. 1974 almost got washed away. They had to pull it back up onto the stumps and rebuild it underneath. It's no longer a scout hall. I went to scouts there. As far as I'm concerned, it should be named not Scout Hall or whatever. I don't know what it's named. I don't know what it's used for now. But to me, it should be named for either the area or for the community group that's using it. Yes, so there's a lot of history to this. But we move on. And I've talked to people from Tin Can Bay and they don't want to necessarily call it Scout Hall. I've talked to people who said, well, Emperor Street Hall makes sense, or Emperor Street Community Hall makes sense. It doesn't need an official name. We don't have to give it an official name. Or we can call it Scout Hall, and whichever group is using it can call it whatever they want and advertise it as whatever they want. So in one sense, giving it an official name is odd. It is not necessary. Calling it Scout Hall is confusing because if there's scouts meet somewhere else, or people think, oh, there's scouts in Tin Can Bay, but there's not. So to me, that's just confusing. I think I'd just prefer to have a plaque there acknowledging the history. That's important. But I think to save community confusion, you're better off either letting the group name it themselves or going to Emperor Street Community Hall.
Speaker against? There are other speakers for?
Oh, can't we go against?
Well, we normally go against and back to for.
Okay, cool. Okay,
and then to against, so if you give you a little bit extra time to prepare, Councillor Polly. For the motion.
The fact of the matter is, heritage is important, and sitting on the heritage, is it a committee or group? Advisory group. I hear a lot of stuff from people that are, I'll say, into it, okay, and I think it's important to recognise the history of what it was built for, not just with a plaque, but with a name. I do think that's important because even though right now it's just, oh, do we name it after the street, do we do this, do it? Down the track, it's an important part of the history of that hall that will be there for future generations to see and acknowledge and all the rest of it. Naming it for the street, well, yeah, it sort of makes sense. The Civic Centre isn't named for the street. The Australian Institute of Country Music isn't named for the street. Hamilton Hall isn't named for the street. We don't tend to do that. So I would like to encourage us all to go with the historical nature of this building. And it's not a architecturally brilliant building by any means, but it does have history, and I think we should acknowledge it.
Any speakers against the recommendation? Councillor Polly.
Oh, sorry. We're going to get shot for this, but if I was using Councillor Devereux's methodology, can we just go back calling Kagari Fraser Island? Because that's what everybody knows it as, but I'm not saying that we should, but the fact is it's there for, oh, and the other reason you said about, there's only one civic centre, there's only one AICN, so people don't get confused, it's not, but there's multiple halls, so I think that was the methodology behind that reasoning. Anyhow, having said that, the reason we've changed it to Kagari, it's only annoying for the people who exist this generation, because that's all we've ever known about it. The fact is, we'll pass away, and the new generation will call it Kagari because they don't know nothing else. So I suppose I look at this and go...
To be clear, I wasn't talking about Fraser Island.
No, I know. I'm just saying if you're using that methodology, that's what you do. But the locals there call it Scout Hall because they've lived there forever. They will pass away, and the new people will call it something different, and the people after that will call it something different. So, in a way, but I do agree with your attach it to the heritage, with a plaque or something. So, I'm sort of against recommendation 2, and I'm more happy with recommendation 3 that do nothing, which I think is what recommendation 3 is. We're not going to do it. And do nothing, and they can call it whatever they want. while they control it, and the next people will just do the same thing. But anyway, that's my against number 2 speech.
So Suncorp Stadium approach.
Any other speakers for?
Lang Park.
Yeah, for Councillor Frederick.
What's in a name, Mr Mayor? This debate is taking up a lot of energy. All we're doing is naming a hall. We've had other options. We've Lions Hall because they built it originally. Waldock Hall because Waldocks apparently rebuilt the Western Wall. It needs a name. I don't care what the name is. If someone's done their own research and think that Scout Hall is an appropriate name, let's not waste too much more time on this.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Waldock.
We've got a name for a hall here so people can navigate to it, whereas my GPS says what's the name of what's the street and what number. We've got 110 Empress Street and the car found its way there. But here we are setting a precedence for others that if this goes through, that they'll find themselves another hall, another community group find another hall, and let's name that too. I don't think they understand or they're disconnected from what these things cost. And here we are again with quite a few staff members and time and wasted, and yeah, we're setting the precedence here. That's just the risk, I think.
So what's your recommendation? Not to?
Not and maybe put the name that makes you feel good on the inside, because officially naming it's pitiful. It's a cost burden. Not my money. You can blow it if you'd like, but I'd rather not.
So you're going for 4.
With that, there's no more speakers or no more left to speak other than me, and I think we've heard enough. We'll go to Councillor Smerdon to close.
Happy to move.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of recommendation 2, that the hall be named the Scout Hall. Councillor Smerdon, Councillor Hartwood, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Fredman. Against, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polly, Councillor Baldock. The motion is carried. The hall will be named Scout Hall. Thank you.
I'll name it whatever they want anyway. The group will name it whatever they want in terms of advertising.
Our open session. We'll break for a short. Do you want to break for lunch now, councillors, or do you want to have a quick break before we go?
I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank Mr. Watson for his for the effort and the professionalism he displayed in the acting role for nearly a month and a half. I believe he did a great job, so thank you to him. A couple of key things. If we're talking about progression in certain areas, in the capital delivery and assets space, firstly, with regards to the delivery of the 22-23 capital program, very pleasing to see that we're basically on track with that delivery. In order to actually assist us to deliver the future program, which in the budget that's just been endorsed with regards to the $110 million plus, the key elements are our project management framework and our asset management framework. And indeed, we're progressing those, and some really great progress is happening in that space. We will be bringing to Council progressive with the asset management plans and how that marries them with the star rating, with the water and wastewater space being addressed in the immediate. The project management framework is being developed, which will actually ensure the governance and actually ensure that there's a great due process to better facilitate the delivery of such a large capital program that we've got on our agenda for for this coming financial year. What I'll also, just talking about acknowledgements as well, I'd also just like to highlight the acknowledgement of two council employees who parted our service for various personal reasons. David Perry, who was the coordinator of GIS, and Kevin Brady, who was the supervisor for construction, but who both made significant contributions to council in their time, one with 17 years service and one with 20 years. It was a fantastic contribution that both of those employees made to the community as well as just council. One of the key elements of what I do want to raise is we've brought to you just a bit of a summary with regards to how we're progressing with the business as usual grading works. And we've identified that we have got a backlog of grading works, but we're actually looking to tackle that. What I'd like to do in future reports is actually provide you with how we're trending in relation to that catch-up of that business as usual works. And really highlighting when I suppose we've labelled a lot of the delays in our business as usual works in the past as being due to the flood and the flood recovery efforts that are being made through DRFA and funded by QRA. I'd like to clearly state that we are now moving forward. We're actually moving forward with all those recovery works, and also then being able to incorporate business as usual works. So important that we actually report back to yourselves with how that trends and how we progress in that space, and therefore being able to inform the community of that positive trend as well. Pleasing to note as well, just from a recruitment point of view, one of the areas that infrastructure has suffered from, if you like, from a vacancy rate perspective, is in the general operations in the roads area. We've progressed from actually having an 18% vacancy rate now to around about 10%. So we've nearly halved, if you like, the positions that are currently vacant through a great effort from HR and recruitment. And also, too, we're actually seeing that we're getting more respondents to the advertisements. So that's a great positive step forward. They're the highlights, councillors, in relation to the last quarter. Any questions?
Questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart.
Like Councillor Devereux, I'll signal how many questions I've got. 4, plus probably supplements. One question actually already answered largely, and that was the backlog of gravel road maintenance works, which I know that Councillor Friedman's also very concerned about, because we get lots of concerns about that, and some of our roads are in far worse condition than they've been for many years. So it's good to know that we're making progress there. It's unfortunate, I think, that we didn't get contractors in to do the flood recovery works for gravel roads, but I'll keep saying it till the day I die. Second question, you got in the asset management plan, so under transport, you're in progress, AMP draft exists, quote received. What's that quote for?
Oh, okay. So that's so basically, Shepherd Services have been actually assisting us with the development of the star rating as an extension of some of the business as usual programming and scheduling works that have been undertaken the last 12 or 18 months. So this is a slight extension of their engagement in order to further progress that star rating from the asset management point of view.
Okay. Thank you. Go back to flood recovery works. So you listed where we're going, how far we got with the gravel roads. I did send an email request about where we're going with the sealed roads and progress we're making there. Do you have an answer, or we can provide an answer at some stage down the track?
If I can take that on notice, Councillor, and get back to you.
And because there's roads in my area which definitely need it. And the last question I had was around, you mentioned wastewater ageing infrastructure being an issue with breakages and such like, so what's being done to address that?
Yeah, so look, and it's a good point to highlight, Councillor, in the report we've actually started obviously with regards to the year's end, that, we nearly doubled, if you like, the water main breaks with regards to our target. Nearly double the sewer main breaks and chokes, which can be through other reasons. But that's a highlight, if you like, of ageing infrastructure. we have actually incorporated a significant investment in this current capital program with regards to water and wastewater infrastructure. But the key element that we're actually finalising is the asset management plan around that infrastructure, which will then better articulate so it can be planned in finance's future long-term financial planning, the actual replacement and renewal of those assets. So it is a piece of work underway. We've got a current amount in this year's budget, but I'd like to say within the next 6 months, we'll be in a position to very accurately be able to project what we're going to invest.
Yep, that's good. I guess it's also that how much do we pay into general funds and how much do we keep to do that asset, which is always going to be an issue. So hopefully having better planning of what needs to be done, we can better work out what dividends that we should be dragging out from water and sewage as against ploughing back into water and sewage. Thanks.
You finished, Councillor?
Yes, I am.
There was no supplementaries?
No, I don't think so. It's pretty amazing, eh? He must have good answers.
Councillor Deborah?
I've got 2 questions with possible supplementaries. First of all, and I just want to quantify this by saying, although the number of breaks and chokes is double what we really want for a year, the last quarter the numbers are substantially down. If you look at the last quarter and you times it by 4, we're well below. So obviously there's been an improvement there, which is fantastic.
Coincidence.
It's a coincidence. Whether I take it back. Thanks, Bob. No, I just like, obviously there has been some improvement there to my reading of it. Are we relining pipes these days? We are?
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so there is a program that we're looking to embark. In actual fact, there's a joint regional program of sewer relining that we're looking to join hands with through the wider Burnett region.
And that's in the budget?
Yes. Yeah,
wonderful. And have we done any in the last year? I realise we've had other issues.
No. Councillor, I have to take that on notice. I can't recall when you read.
I'm only mentioning it because when I came into this position initially, there was some talk around the fact that we weren't doing it. So I just wanted to mark that. My second question has to do with roads. Now, at one point we were told, we went out on a little excursion, which was fantastic, and we were given the cost of roads with curb and channelling and how much they were. I think it was $1 million a kilometre. And then all the different grades of roads and how much they cost with maintenance. And one of the things I would like to highlight, which I'm sure you're aware of, is most of the complaints I get are around gravel roads and the fact that they haven't seen a grader for so long. Now, you did mention that there's some action happening there. I am surprised, though, when you look at the cost of one against the other, the grading is so far behind, because if it is so cheap to do a kilometre of road and everything, I would have thought it would have been something that was fairly easy to keep up with. Is it the lack of grader drivers or machines, or what has historically been the issue there?
So Councillor, there's you talk about resources. I just indicated we've gone from 18% vacancy rate to 12 or about 10% vacancy rate. So that has been a challenge for us in the past. Hasn't been the principal reason why there's been a backlog. As we're aware that the resources were committed to doing DRFA works principally through the last financial year, and we've turned that around. So that has actually added to that backlog of works. If you talk about dollar value and dollars generally relate to time as well, if you like taking to do a higher grade than some other major works, it still takes time. And there's, as we've indicated with regards to the small table there, we've got a backlog of 360 kilometres of road with regards to grading works. That's a lot of,
it is, yes.
Lot of work. And it's something that we can't just fix within a few months. It's going to take a short while to actually.
Yeah, no, obviously, yes. And
So the logic there is actually making sure we've got our planning and scheduling aligned to be able to take care of that backlog whilst we don't allow the existing business as usual to fall behind. So we don't rob Peter to pay Paul.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fredman.
I'm getting somewhat hammered on grading or lack thereof of gravel roads like Bella Creek. But the one that's more concerning is the complaints I'm getting about the edges on narrow bitumen roads, because you start to enter the realm of genuine safety. On a road like Bella Creek Road, which has got more potholes than flat areas, at least you're doing 20 kilometres an hour. But roads like Blackgate Road, Calico Creek Road, Diamondfield Road, in my area alone, we're getting some very deep edges, and that's where people do tyres, do wheels, and certainly on Diamondfield, it's led to a rollover. I hope we've got a balance in our emphasis, and I invite you to discuss this, because from a safety point of view, bad edges on bitumen roads is a higher priority than other types of maintenance. I'm talking about the safety angle, and I hope we haven't forgotten that's actually arguably one of the highest priorities.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, it's a very critical aspect, and sometimes it is possible to, if you like, be blinded by, this quantum of work, which is the basic grading works, and potentially get blinded with some higher safety level aspects. So in order to resolve how we manage that, that's part of the engagement with shepherds that we've been undertaking, is to make sure we appropriately schedule that works, and that then is totally aligned then with the star rating. The star rating actually does actually highlight safety issues as well as simply rideable or comfort issues in relation to roads. But the safety actually trumps everything else. So Councillor, yes, look, I take that on note, and I will actually dive a bit deeper to make sure that we are addressing those as a high priority and not forgetting about them.
Councillor Stewart.
Can I just add to what Councillor Fredman said? I do find that when I raise a complaint about the deep ruts next to narrow bitumen roads, they do get repaired quickly, so I do appreciate that. But it seems like they're not monitored or whatever. That I don't know what happens in terms of the checking of roads, but it's something that people go around checking the state of roads should be looking at, is those sharp drop-offs on the narrow bitumen roads.
Council, we do actually have a schedule of inspections and a group of inspectors that go out in a program sense to actually inspect those roads. But I will go back to the team and highlight the need to really ensure that the inspectors are dealing with the sealed roads as a real priority and not kind of being blinded by this huge quantum of work associated with grading.
Yeah, the question is Councillor Wardle.
Okay, on the subject of roads here, and the inspectors. Okay, costs a lot to get an inspector out there and drive around all day checking out the roads. Have we ever looked into what the other councils are doing and putting a camera on our dump trucks? They're around every week.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, yeah, look, indeed, talking about experience, I come from a council, Cairns. We were one of the first to actually put cameras on their waste trucks.
You're onto it.
And we're working with shepherds again. There's a range of actually tools that we can actually utilise in order to actually better inform, give us better data and more up-to-date data. But no, look, yeah, definitely something that we're looking at.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Fredman.
Just in relation to all this talk about star rating of our roads, I hope that a bad bitumen edge drop-off that is a safety issue is dealt with regardless of whether it's 1 or 5 stars. We'd just like to comment that only takes one car to roll and someone be injured or killed, and all of a sudden the star rating is irrelevant.
Indeed, thanks, Councillor. I think the star rating is absolutely primarily related to general maintenance work. So any safety related issue which is picked up by inspectors is addressed as an absolute priority over and above what the star rating is telling us as far as the frequency we need to maintain roads. And Councillor, as you stated, we can't have inspectors out every single day at every single inch of the road. So there is a schedule that happens. So we do rely on feedback from the community and the like, that if there is an issue that has occurred, to be notified so we can actually fix the problem.
I think Councillor Fredman, you'll always be 5-star.
Especially Deco.
Mr Mayor, we do get answers that indicate my roads are 5-star. However, when you get an answer saying, oh, we should get there in 6 weeks, and it's a bad drop-off, all of a sudden the star rating, I want it to be 6-star, because 5-star isn't working if that's the way the system is. And perhaps we need to look at the meaning of safety and place it as a highest priority for road maintenance. It's your call. Have you got any comment?
Yes, Councillor, yeah. So with the star rating that we rolled out, you might recollect that we actually had response times associated with various things. So apart from the star rating, which simply gives you the categorisation for the maintenance regime and maintenance schedule for roads, whether they be sealed or unsealed, there was also a categorisation there as far as response times for certain defects and certain issues. And one of them was safety. And then there was response times in relation to those particular safety events. So I will go back and revisit those response times and make sure that they are appropriate. But it is something to be considered, but it's worthwhile having a revisit.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Councillor Spurn to move, Councillor Devereux to second. Councillor Spurn to speak.
Thank you, Mr O'Byrne, for that report. Infrastructure Service Director certainly has a hard job covering all the roads of the area and that sort of thing. I didn't actually realise you were away. Mr Watson must have done a really good job. Anyway, thank you again, sir, and I'm happy to move.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. I'd just like to, again, mention the star rating thing. I think it's brilliant. Service level and all that is fantastic. What I like about it is it'll be fairly easy as a resident to understand. And I think it will go a long way towards residents. It's not necessarily about, it's not about fixing roads. It's about having, from where I'm sitting, the community understand where their road sits. To try and ease their mind about when they can expect things to be done, rather than just sitting there thinking it never gets done. And I think that's important. So I know it's a large body of work, and I know it's been coming a long time. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into that particular body of work. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Spurn to close.
Happy to move, Mr Mayor.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. That concludes our open council session. We only have a couple of items, councillors, so if you're comfortable, we'll just keep rolling on. Yeah.
But with a break,
He's coming.
By the train, it arrives when it's late.
Is the recording definitely?
Open.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
We just starting the live stream again.
Yes, we just need to get on for the vote.
Sorry.
Councillors, we have a number of items to go through in committee. Is there someone to move that we go in committee? Councillor Devereux, Councillor Jensen, second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. I'll hand over to Mr. Lewis. ice cream to get up.
Good to go.
We're good to go. Councillors were aware, item 11.1 has been pulled from the agenda. We'll deal with item 11.2. We have a mover of Councillor Smirk, a seconder of Councillor Baldock. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And item 11.3, we have a mover of Councillor Fredman, second of Councillor Devereux. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. That concludes our meeting for today.